Good evening. I'm pretty sure something's going to be right here in just a second, so I can see what you're seeing. I appreciate everything that's been done at this conference. It's been better than any that I can remember. How about, do you think so? How many of you are surprised to know that HRN has one employee? What you see was one employee and volunteers. So if it wouldn't whack this microphone really loud, I would clap too. So I'm going to get serious here because you guys know I can't tell jokes. I even tried out a couple on Mike up at lunch yesterday, and he's like, no. No. So, I'm not even going to try because it's kind of a serious topic I want to bring to you. And believe it or not, it's a topic I didn't want to. I had something else. Thank you, Brendan. You guys know he does just about everything here. He always seems to be on time, too. I'll pay for that later, won't I? Well, let's just make everybody mad. Okay, so you guys now know Mark and Tammy McClendon. You've been watching them for the last 3 days. Mark, could you stand up? Clap your hands if you think Tammy dressed him. Okay, that was the equivalent of a joke. Okay. Every Shabbat, okay. Well, I barely dress myself, so I'm not complaining, all right? The topic I have for you tonight is not one I plan to bring, and that's why, even though it'll have the same title, it's on a different presentation. So, tried to make Kathy happy. This is a topic, when you know you already have a reputation, how many of you think you might have a reputation? Okay, hopefully it's a good one. And I already know what my reputation is. Okay, you won't surprise me if I overhear you telling your friends I'm too rabbinic. Okay? But I'm smiling. It's okay. You're not offending me. It's like a compliment. So it's just like, when your friends think you're trying to be Jewish, that should be a compliment because they keep the commandments, right? So thank you. Appreciate it. Not quite right, but it's a compliment. So it's not really something I wanted to bring to a general session. And it's such an important topic. I came to find out after I presented it because it said something to my online students. I taught this back in the Torah portion, Shalach Lecha. And I didn't even want to teach it to them. Because on one side, it's very academic, but on the other side, we're going into some rabbinic sources to try to understand what was the Jewish expectation of a Messiah in the first century. And once we hammer that out, sometimes there's passages of the Gospels or even the letters of the apostles that will open up to us. It'll make a lot more sense. And how many of you, once your friends or family found out you were starting to keep a few more commandments, they ask you very earnestly, not sarcastically, but very earnestly, they ask you, why can't the Jews see Messiah? Have you ever had that question? Over and over, especially when they find out you're too rabbinic. So there's an answer to that. Think of the whole Torah as you know it. Is there any verse or is there any particular chapter in the Torah that tells you there will be such a person as a Messiah, that this person will be born on a specific date, his parents will be named this and this, He'll be born in this town. These are the specific things he will do. And it's all very nice and concise. And so when this event happens, you just go back and say, yep, that's it right there. It's in that verse. Would you maybe have struggled with identifying Messiah in the first century if you didn't already know what you know? See, you have a gift of hindsight. Do you realize what a gift that is? Think of if you didn't know anything about Messiah and you were trying to figure him out. And to this day, we go through the same process. Now, we're very clear about who Messiah is, and I think that's where people kind of are a little suspect when you read the rabbinical sources. They think somehow if you read a midrash, you're going to turn into an Orthodox Jew tomorrow. And you can have a bite of challah. I guarantee you won't be Jewish tomorrow. That's not how it works. Probably those who are maybe getting caught up into an Orthodox conversion after they start studying rabbinic sources, I suspect they were already headed in that direction. I think there was already a predisposition for that. Because I can tell you one thing. I know more about Messiah Yeshua today than I ever did before. I appreciate his work more than I ever did before. There is a depth and a height and a breadth of what I know about him that I could have never imagined even 10 years ago when I was already keeping the Torah. And believe it or not, it's an Orthodox rabbi who's been helping us. And he knows exactly who we are. He knows exactly what we stand for. And all he can say is, well, maybe this is what Zechariah was prophesying about. And so with that relationship, see, we didn't do it on social media. We did it through relationship, where we learned to trust one another. And when you learn to trust one another and you build that relationship, then you're free to ask questions without feeling like the person's going to bite your head off. You're just asking the question. And so it's a great freedom for both of us. It's funny, one time my husband was complaining that they were trying to make him come into work on Shabbat. And the rabbi said, well, why don't you just tell him, and it's the same Sabbath that Jesus observed? And I said, in what century does an Orthodox rabbi help a Gentile try to get off on Shabbat? But you understand that's what relationship does, and not just running your head at each other on Facebook? There's a difference. There's a difference. How many of you got saved because you read a verse on Facebook? How many of you got saved because there was a human being who intervened in your life? Yeah. Goes back to the messenger. So I was afraid might not be I didn't want to do this. But independently of one another, some students emailed me and said, I think you need to present this at Revive because it really helped me clarify what's happening in the Gospels and how maybe people might have missed Messiah. What were they looking for? And Yeshua even warned us, didn't he? There's going to be lots of Messiahs arise, and people are going to say the Messiah's over here, the Messiah's over there. Don't go running after them. But it also says, if possible, even the elect could be deceived. And so we may not want to frown too deeply upon first century people who missed it when we still have that hanging over our heads at Messiah's return, that we might think he has and he didn't. I mean, it would sober you up. That's why, this isn't joke time. So let's go on. And I want to look at the two expectations of Messiah. There's actually three. And if you can understand what they were looking for and the fact that they weren't even sure exactly how that would look when it arrived, because they're going through the Torah. Remember, the idea is prophecy begins in the Torah. Well, they have the prophecies of the Torah. They have the prophecies of the prophets, but it's just like us. If you go into a Christian bookstore, how many books are there on Daniel and Revelation? Everybody's got an idea of what they mean and how that's going to happen. Same thing in the first century. There were all sorts of competing ideas about what Messiah would be and look like when he arrived, most of them would agree with you that they expected at least two, maybe more. But they were looking back to the Torah as prophecy. And where they derived the expectation of two messiahs comes from a very recent Torah portion that we read. It goes back to the report of the 12. Out of the 12, there were two that were faithful reports. And they were Caleb and Joshua. And so those became the archetypes of Messiah, of expectation. When Messiah comes, he will be like these two. He will be like Joshua. He will be like Caleb. And so in tradition, what arose was an expectation of Messiah bar Ephraim, but he is the same person as Messiah ben Yosef. So if I say Messiah ben Yosef, or if I say Messiah bar Ephraim, it's the same persona. The other expectation was Messiah ben David. Bar and ben are the same, Aramaic, Hebrew. Messiah ben David, or Messiah bar David, the son of David. And it goes back to the tribes that these two faithful spies, which they weren't really spies, they were tourists, right? And so they bring back a faithful report, and we know that those are the two men of war age who are going to be able to go into the land of Israel. And they're going to lead the people in. So if you're expecting a Messiah, you would expect him to be able to lead the people in. So they see two figures. And that's the when I wrote Seven Shepherds, I tried to explain a little bit of this, what they were expecting from a Messiah and why they challenged Yeshua in the temple, specifically at Hanukkah, because they had a prophecy of the seven shepherds. And they're asking him, are you the seventh shepherd? Are you the eighth prince? There's a specific expectation with that. And it seems like Yeshua's pushing them off. He starts talking about sheep. Well, he's actually on task there, because when we look at Messiah bar Ephraim, this is going to be one of the expectations of him, is he's going to have to gather the lost sheep. And so when he starts talking about sheep and saying, you can't hear me because you're not one of my sheep, he's basically saying, yes, I am Messiah, but you're not hearing me. You're not understanding, because you're looking for Messiah ben David. You want a conquering king to come wipe out Edom, which is Rome. You want to be restored as the crown of the nations. You want all the good stuff. You're tired of the suffering, and therefore you don't really want to hear that I'm going to suffer and die at the gates of Jerusalem like your expectation says. They want to skip over bar Ephraim and get straight to ben David. Now, I can't fault them for that. I would like that too. Even Peter resists. He says, oh, no, you're not going to die. And he says, get behind me, Satan, you don't understand. And so what I hope I can do is help you reconcile their expectation of two messiahs and see how we can understand they are one person. But maybe it'll give you a little bit of sympathy for their position where they didn't quite see that. Those two were one, even though in the literature it will tell you they are inseparable. The prophecy of Ezekiel tells you they are inseparable. Nevertheless, they're two people and they're two trees. We'll go through some of those scriptures. The problem with bar Ephraim, or not really wanting to see bar Ephraim first, even though the belief is that he will come first, is because out of the many different ideas about how that would look, one of those is that he's going to fight Gog at the gates of Jerusalem. Some stories will say he defeats Gog at the gates of Jerusalem. Others will say, no, he's defeated. Not really defeated. He's not defeated. He's killed. He's killed at the gates of Jerusalem by Gog. And so put yourself in their place. They don't know for sure because it's not played out yet. And so with this Bar Ephraim character, we've got a 50-50 shot that he's going to survive. Why not look for Ben David, right? This is the one that's not going to die. Let's just forget Bar Ephraim. We don't really know there. But Yeshua spoke of himself in both contexts. He spoke of himself in the context of a suffering servant, and he also allowed himself to be also seen as the son of David. Remember when he comes into Jerusalem? They're calling him Son of David. He would heal people who called him Son of David. This is a specific aspect of Messiah that was expected, which is Ben David. Bar Ephraim was supposed to suffer, perhaps to die, but he's then supposed to go out, gather the exiles, gather in the lost tribes, bring them to the gates of Jerusalem, with them, I believe the number was 600,000 of them. Once he assembled 600,000 of them, he would defeat Gog, and that would open the gates of Jerusalem to the rest of the lost tribes. That's the nutshell of the belief. So Yeshua, you can see, he says, I don't have a place to lay my head. He speaks of himself as both Ben David and Bar Ephraim. And so it's up for the crowd out there wandering around, not really being sure if he's the one or not, because there have been others. Is he the one or not? Is he meeting these qualifying signs? So if we look at this, it might solve two questions for us, at least give us an answer. I don't think I'm solving the whole question for you, right? There's too many explanations for too many things. You figure that out after a while. But I want to offer you a couple of explanations. First of all, for the revised list of the tribes in the book of Revelation, and why there seems to be the names. I'm not telling you the tribes are missing from the 144,000. I'm telling you there's two names missing from the 144,000. Now, cheer up. You're looking worried, like, oh my goodness, what if I'm one of those tribes and I'm missing? You're not. Even if you were in one of those unnamed tribes, you would still be there. The text itself tells you that they're all there. It just chooses not to name two of them, and I think I have at least one good explanation for why those two particular tribes are not named, and why we have this kind of revision. I call it a rebibliography. Because Scripture will do that sometimes. It will present you a list, and then later you'll see the list again, but they're out of order. And that doesn't mean that anybody was confused. It means you were supposed to learn this thing from this list, and you were supposed to learn that thing from that list. When you read the list of the 144,000, the presentation of the names is in a specific order. And so you can learn something from that. And I believe what you're going to learn is that there has been a rectification of the golden calf and that Messiah has come. So the text, Numbers 13, 2 through 16, this is the account of the spies. And I don't want to read the whole thing, but I want to point out to you the two figures who are selected as being the messianic figures from the 12 tribes. We see Igal, the son of Yosef, from the tribe of Ephraim, Hoshea, the son of Nun, from the tribe of Benjamin, and so forth. Then we skip down from the tribe of Joseph, Yosef, from the tribe of Menashe, Gadi, the son of Susi, and so forth. So we can see right here that both Ephraim and Menashe are named by name. They're two separate people on this trip. And so Hoshea, who we know as Joshua or Yehoshua, and by the way, Yehoshua is just the long form of Yeshua. Just like Elishua, Elisha. Right? Scripture will do that sometimes. Same person, it's just a short form or a long form. So with Yehoshua, we see him coming from the tribe of Ephraim. And then we see also from the tribe of Joseph, from the tribe of Menashe. We see Menashe being associated with the tribe of Joseph. Now in Revelation, it's going to be reversed. Ephraim's name is going to be missing. We assume that he is now part of the tribe of Joseph, which is specifically named, and replaces it, but it's going to be Menashe who pops up in the 144,000. Okay, I wanted to show you how it's laid out here in the original prophecy text, so it'll make more sense when you see it in Revelation. But it says Moses called Hoshea, the son of Nun, Yehoshua. So what I have here are some quotes from an academic paper. Rather than take you through a bunch of targums, which I'm sure you would not like to be taken through a bunch of targums, or the Talmud, it presented what I thought was a great both academic, peer-reviewed summary of their expectations of these two messiahs, and in some cases 3 messiahs. They actually thought that there might be another Messiah who would come from the Kohanim, from the line of Aaron. And so we won't read every word. You can wipe your forehead right there. But understand, even in this teeny tiny little summary from the Targums, there's a lot of stuff left out. Because as you read the literature, you realize they didn't know. They're trying to work it out through the scriptures the same way that we do. So what we want to look for is what is first century messianic expectation, and then that might help us put together why there's 2 names that seem to be missing from that 144,000. And if you would like to look at the whole paper yourself, I'm listing it right here. I want to give credit where credit's due. And so it's this article right here. You can go online, you can pull it up, you can probably print out the whole article if you want to. And what's great about these sorts of things is it'll give you a bibliography of other sources. If you want to find out where this author found it, they'll tell you where they found it. You can go read that too, and that helps you assemble a really good understanding if you're as big a nerd as I am. So here's some summaries. This is from the Targum. Pseudo-Yonatan. And if you don't know what a Targum is, remember the scriptures are written mainly in Hebrew, the Tanakh. Now there's going to be some Aramaic mixed in there with Daniel and so forth. But for the most part, it's in Hebrew, and you had a lot of Jewish people in the first century who did not speak Hebrew. They spoke Aramaic. It's very close, but no cigar. So they had people within the synagogues who could translate it into whatever language most of the synagogue spoke. And so the Targums are put together for Aramaic speakers. And don't look at a Targum as a word-for-word attempt at a translation. It's not. In fact, as you look back at how they were viewed, they were almost seen as sermons about the Hebrew text. So it's going to have that little added evangelistic kind of push to it. And so it's helping to clarify for the synagogue members what they just heard in the Torah. And so this is a commentary on the anointing that took place on the tabernacle articles. And in this Targum, what they're trying to do is kind of preach a message about how this anointing of the tabernacle articles personified these expected messiahs. Because a messiah is a Mashiach. He is an anointed one. And so by anointing these particular articles, they're saying this is a prophecy of the Messiah. So this one says, you shall take the anointing oil and anoint the tabernacle and all that is in it. You shall consecrate it, it says, for the sake of the crown of the kingdom of the house of Judah, and of the King Messiah, who is destined to redeem Israel at the end of days. So that's important to know. They saw anointing the tabernacle and all that was in it for the sake of King Messiah. So that adds you a nice little element when you're reading about the consecration of the tabernacle each year. Now as you see Aaron and his sons performing these services, you can say to yourself, this anointing that you're doing was actually prophecy of King Messiah. It says, you shall anoint the altar of burnt offerings and all its utensils and consecrate the altar The altar will be most holy for the sake of the crown of the priesthood of Aaron and his sons, and of Elijah the high priest, who is to be sent at the end of the exiles. So here, this is early, where they're starting to see Elijah as being associated with King Messiah. In fact, they believe that 3 days before Messiah comes, Elijah will come and proclaim him. If you see Elijah, Messiah is 3 days behind. I don't know where he is, but he's 3 days behind. And in this context, they're putting Elijah in a messianic sort of high priest role. It says, you shall anoint the laver and its base and consecrate it for the sake of Yehoshua, your attendant, the head of the Sanhedrin of his people, by whose hand the land of Israel is to be divided, and of Messiah bar Ephraim, who will proceed from him, and by whose hand the house of Israel will conquer Gog and his horde at the end of days. So they see the bar Ephraim Messiah as being either figuratively or a literal descendant of Joshua, coming from the tribe of Ephraim, and they believe that just like Joshua, he will be a warrior. And he is going to gather these exiles of the Israelites, and he is going to eventually, kind of a toss-up whether he dies first in their tradition, eventually he will defeat Gog at the end of days. And then at that point, this is when you see Mashiach ben David come in, where he will unite the kingdom, he will unite the tribes, and set up the actual monarchy united again. And remember, we're saying what they say. We're looking at what they believed and what they expected. I don't want you to lose that context. And so the writer here points out that they're looking here at three different types of Messiah. Judah, one from Aaron or the tribe of Levi, and Ephraim. And it says each tribe has two sets of representatives. The first is historical. They're linking the Messiah to a specific historical figure, such as Joshua or Caleb or Aaron. And it says the second, eschatological. In other words, end of days prophecies. So we don't know whether they believe these are literal descendants or if it's one of those yes questions, yes and yes. But they know that they're expecting King Messiah from Judah, and they're expecting Messiah bar Ephraim from Joshua. And these are to come at the end of days, and Elijah is associated with this. And it's thought that Elijah would be the one who would sort out these 12 tribes. And he would be the one to say, you're from the tribe of Asher, you're from the tribe of Naphtali, and then he could tell you which direction to go in order to return to your inheritance. I'm not going to read you all the stuff about the dating of this. A true scholar would debate me and say this wasn't really a thing until 2nd or 3rd century. And so I just put some little blurbs in there where they have dated it, some of it to at least 100 BC. So some of this expectation as it's being handed down, it wasn't new to 2nd or 3rd century, and it doesn't even make sense that they would wait until then to write down stuff like this when too clearly it matched Messiah Yeshua. That wouldn't have helped their cause any. If they're trying to have these debates, if they're trying to separate from the Nazarenes, from the Christians, then what we're reading, the types and the shadows, are very much in line with what the Christians and the Nazarenes are saying Yeshua did. They would have rather wanted to take these things out, not leave them in. But here's what they believed about bar Ephraim. They said it's necessary that his death was seen as a propitiating sacrifice. They say in Deuteronomy 33:17, it represents the firstborn of Ashur. This is a Josephite warrior. Ashur is a bull. It's usually associated with not just the tribe of Joseph, but the divisional representation of Joseph. It's an animal dedicated to sacrifice specifically, so it's not random that he would be represented by a bull. He's being represented by a sacrificial animal, which is going to be the nature of bar Ephraim / bar Yosef. They see the death of a Josephite king in Zechariah 12:10, which is going to open up a fountain to cleanse from sin. Where did the apostles get the idea that Yeshua, his atoning blood, could cleanse for sin? It goes way back. It's how they're reading the prophets. It also says that the Josephite Lamb of God, see the Bar Ephraim, he is seen as a sacrificial lamb. Perhaps what provoked John the Baptist to say, "Behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world." It has context right here in what the people would have been expecting about Bar Ephraim. They say that this Josephite Lamb of God is going to destroy Belial by dying. That's pretty specific. It also recognizes a link between the death of Messiah ben Yosef and the death of the evil inclination. What we call Satan, in Orthodoxy, they're more likely to call the Yetzer Hara, or the evil inclination. And they say through the death of this Messiah ben Yosef, that evil inclination, or what we would call Satan, it's going to destroy him. It says it's going to affect the destruction of Satan, bearing the sins of Israel, and bringing in the King Messiah and redemption, which would be the era of Ben David, the king of Judah. And so in Revelation 20, verse 2, it says, "He took hold of the dragon, the serpent of old, who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. If you read this with Jewish eyes, they would be reading this as the evil inclination, which is exactly what we just read. It's very specific. Zechariah 13:1 says, "On that day a fountain will be opened for the house of David and for the inhabitants of Jerusalem, for sin and for defilement." They're saying this refers to Bar Ephraim, preparing the way for Ben David. "And it will come about on that day, declares the Lord of armies, that I will eliminate the names of the idols from the land, and they will be no longer remembered. And I will also remove the prophets and the unclean spirit from the land." Again, this goes back to having Satan bound for 1,000 years, removing that unclean spirit from the land where he can no longer try to oppress. So the Targum to the Song of Songs says, "Two deliverers shall there be to deliver you, Messiah bar David and Messiah bar Ephraim." They're like Moses and Aaron, which kind of goes back to, like I was telling the breakout class, once you understand what Song of Songs is really saying, it really isn't the sexiest book in the Bible, okay? It just kind of destroys all that, because it's all about the Torah, it's all about the tribes, the return of the exiles, and the resurrection and the bride. So if you're thinking about two gazelles, you're supposed to be thinking about Moses and Aaron, okay? You can also, I didn't mean it like that either. I knew I was in trouble when I said Song of Songs. But they say Messiah bar David and Messiah bar Ephraim are like Moses and Aaron. They're like these two gazelles. They have like twin ministries here, that they're complementary. And they say these two messiahs, when they come, one of the signs that they'll bring is they will be able to supernaturally feed and give drink to Israel. And so we can look back at the miracles that Yeshua performed, where he doesn't just multiply bread once. He does it more than once. And then he identifies himself as the bread of heaven. He doesn't just give water, he turns the water into wine, which is said to be what flows through one of the rivers of Eden in their tradition. So that would have meant something. It's not just, ooh, water into wine, it's, wow, that's a very Edenic sign. But then Yeshua stands up at Sukkot and starts talking about, "He who is thirsty, let him come to me and drink. For as it is written, out of his belly shall flow rivers of living water." So he's saying, I'm giving you signs of Messiah right here to see. I'm multiplying your bread supernaturally, and I'm offering you the living water. It was like, Bill was talking about earlier. I've given you sign after sign after sign. What are you not understanding? I won't go into the dating of the Targums. I kind of summarized that for you, that there's pretty good evidence that at least portions of it predate Yeshua's time. So these expectations would already be embedded. And to add them later, like I say, wouldn't have helped Judaism as it was being formed as Judaism. Up to that point, it's going to be Judaisms of the first century. Once the temple's destroyed, then it becomes more homogeneous and starts taking on a form that we would recognize. But for the Christians, for the Nazarenes to be out there preaching this Bar Ephraim nature of Yeshua, had these things not been in existence, these traditions, these beliefs, not been in existence for some time, they probably would have just written it out because it caused them a lot of trouble. They couldn't write it out. It had been there too long. So, again, there's this tradition that they're interpreting from Zechariah 12:10, that there's going to be a Messiah from northern Israel, from the Galilee, that he's going to be slain at Jerusalem's gate. Everybody tries to figure out where Yeshua was crucified. I suggest looking around the gates, because that was their expectation. In other words, it wouldn't make sense for them to leave these things in their literature if they hadn't been around for just a long time. Now, when they're looking at these two messiahs, the problem goes all the way back to the golden calf. Once they received the Torah at Sinai, remember at that point, I think Bill was talking about John the Baptist sending a messenger. Is this the one, or should we look for another? And a lot of times we'll just skip right over the gospel text, and it's telling us something pretty specific that John would have understood, loved Bill's explanation. But there was something embedded in there in that first century Jewish mind, that at Mount Sinai, when the people stood at the mountain, everybody was instantaneously healed. No matter what transpired between leaving Egypt and arriving at the mountain, there were no blind people because they all saw the thunder and the lightning and the smoke. There was nobody who was lame because they all stood. There was nobody who couldn't speak because they all said, "We will do and we will hear." There was nobody who couldn't hear because they all heard the sounds. So they see that particular moment as an instantaneous healing. That's why so many Jewish hospitals are called Mount Sinai. And so when the messengers come to Yeshua, if you'll read the text very closely, it says, at that time, at that moment, he heals all these people. And he says, now go tell John what you just saw. He'll understand. He'll understand that I'm that word. Don't look for another. I'm the one who can heal them with the word. And so this goes back to Mount Sinai. They were healed. Impurity had just left the camp because there's no death in the camp now. The offer now is, if you continue on this course, if you'll wait for Moses to come down, he's going to teach you how to walk in this, you could go into the land of promise and enter into immortality again. But then we had two problems. We had a golden calf, and then we've got 10 spies. And the way that sages look at this is that, of course, it took a while, but eventually the sin of the golden calf was atoned for. But at that point, they were on a kind of probation, and they had fallen out of that realm of purity. Death was once again in the camp. So the offer of immortality at this point is kind of off the table. But they could have still experienced the land at an elevated level, such as they saw when they cut down the grapes at Eshcol. And those grapes at Eshcol, the rabbis tear that word apart and say, Eshcol, the cluster of grapes that they cut down, it was a picture of Messiah because he was an Ish, a man in whom was kol, everything. And they cut him down at Eshcol. See how prophecy starts in the Torah? Isn't that cool? I don't know. Aren't you guys just kind of like kids playing with a new box of toys when you get in the Torah? So they say, because of the golden calf, they deserve death. So now they're on probation. But then when the evil report comes back in about the land, now all the men of war age are going to die, except for Joshua and Caleb, our two messianic figures. Caleb, a Jew, would later go into the land. You know, and for those of you who are just kind of sitting around waiting for Messiah to come put you on a cloud and take you to Israel, Mike kind of says the things I think but won't say out loud, so he's emboldened me. If Caleb and Joshua were willing to go into the land and to scout it out and bring back a good report, and they weren't going to be able to come back for a long time, why can't we? Why can't we? Just get your feet in the land. It'll build your faith. What I'm afraid is a window has closed right now, and it'll never be as easy to get into the land as it has been. I pray that's not the case, because some of you still need to go. You still need to see what's possible there. Because when you go in with the eyes of Messiah, you will have to see what Balaam was forced to see. See, if you just go with natural eyes, you'll see dirt and rocks. You'll see a government that's even more chaotic than ours. You'll see people who disagree just like we do. You'll see conservatives and liberals and everything in between. And lots of in-betweens that we just can't agree with. But you stick your feet on that soil and you start waving those banners. You start praying over that land and you say, we can do it. And you go back and you tell we can do it. We can take this place. We trust in the man in whom is everything. Everything is in him. I am not going to cut him down. He will lead me over. He is a man of war like Joshua. So Caleb, who comes from the tribe of Judah, he's going to go back and he's going to conquer Hebron, which was thought to be an entrance back to the Garden of Eden. That's why the patriarchs and the matriarchs are buried there. It was a sign of faith in the resurrection. When Enrico took you in the Torah service, those first two benedictions of the prayers, those are both resurrection benedictions. Not just the second one, the resurrection of the dead, the Gevurah, but also the one that starts out with the shield of Abraham. That expectation of resurrection. So Caleb goes back there, he possesses that city, and later King David will rule from Hebron for 7 years. But what's going to happen is that this golden calf is kind of going to be that anchor that helps us understand not just messianic expectation of what the Messiah is expected to do, but I think it's going to clear up the 144,000, at least one way. Because remember, he says, I will eliminate the names of the idols from the land. Well, this is the first idolatrous problem they run into. Once they're brought out of Egypt, it's going to be the golden calf. And so what I think we're seeing by the omission of these two names is that we are seeing that, number one, Messiah has arrived, and number two, he's saying, now the sin of the golden calf is rectified. It's fully rectified. You were free to enter into the land in immortality once again. Uh-oh. How did he do that? Note to self. Don't use nice graphics. Hey! So here's our list. Revelation 7:4. It says, I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000, sealed from every tribe of the sons of Israel. From the tribe of Judah, 12,000, and so forth. And as we get down through there, we see from the tribe of Joseph, 12,000, and we see there that Ephraim is removed, and Manasseh is going to take a place in that particular list. But like I said, not to worry. Don't worry about Dan. Don't worry about Ephraim. They're there. It says they are from every tribe. Whether you see the name or not, the tribe is there. And then it says, from every nation and all the tribes. Well, are Dan and Ephraim tribes? Yes. So they are there. Don't worry. They're okay. So you notice, first of all, they're not in chronological order, and they're not back in this order in which they camped. What does that tell you? You're supposed to learn something different from reading this particular list. These tribes who were sealed are going to have to sing a war song. And if you remember last week's Torah portion, this week's Torah portion, we run into the problem with the Midianite women. Again, a war is going to come up. And the 144,000 who are sealed, it says, some translations will say they're virgins. Others will say they've not defiled themselves with women. Remember, this is referring to idols. In the symbolism of the Tanakh, it's talking about idolatry. We're not talking, we could be talking about 144,000 literal virgins, but that's not the point. They've not entered into idolatry. So the golden calf was an issue. And then last week, this week, our Torah portions, again, idolatry is an issue. And then they have to raise so many from each tribe to go out and to take vengeance on the Midianites. And so we're not worried about those two missing tribes because they also participated in taking this vengeance. But let's go back to the stick of Joseph. Since Ephraim his name disappeared and Joseph pops up, let's go back to their messianic expectation, part of which is derived from Zechariah 4:11. They match it up with Ezekiel, which talks, we're familiar with this, about the two sticks. But Ezekiel says the stick of Joseph is in the hand of Ephraim. But the two sticks that are going to be united are Joseph and Judah. So there's one little hint about our list. Joseph is in the list, Judah's in the list. But the stick of Joseph was in the hand of Ephraim. The two messiahs they understood were inseparable based on Zechariah 4:11. They thought Ben Yosef or Bar Ephraim, he would gather the exiles. Then they would be united under Messiah ben David. The kingdom would be established. And the thing to remember about the two sticks, it's eitz, which is a tree. You can translate it tree, stick, board, lumber, wood. But they saw it as the two trees, and they put it in the context of Zechariah 4:11, where it says, I said to him, what are these two olive trees on the right of the lampstand and on its left? They see those two figures, those two trees, as the two messiahs. We read something almost identical in Revelation 11:4. It says, these are the two olive trees and the two lampstands that stand before the Lord of the earth. So for those of us who believe that Bar Ephraim, the suffering servant, who is regathering the exiles, and would you agree that the exiles are being gathered under his name? Yeah. We believe that he's both. He's gathering the exiles, and then at some point, once they are gathered, or at least a preliminary representation at that point, there's going to be a great war. Gog will be defeated, and then Ben David, who I believe is the same Messiah, that aspect of him will be revealed to everyone. So he's one Messiah coming in two appearances or two testimonies, working as one. And so Zechariah 4:14 says, these are the two anointed ones who are standing by the Lord of the whole earth. You can see now, do you have a shred of sympathy for why they might have missed Yeshua as the Messiah? Even to this day? Where it's saying these are the two anointed ones. So how do we reconcile this? Well, it goes back to Ezekiel 37, verse 16. You, son of man, take for yourself one stick and write on it for Judah and the sons of Israel, his companions. Then take another stick and write on it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and all the house of Israel, his companions. Then put them together for yourself, one another into one stick. And you can just insert in there a tree if you want to, if it makes it easier, so that they may become one in your hand. And when the sons of your people speak to you, saying, will you not declare to us what you mean by these? Say to them, this is what the Lord God says. Behold, I'm going to take the tree of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel, his companions, and I will put them with it, with the tree of Judah, and make them one tree, and they will be one in my hand. The sticks on which you write will be in your hand before their eyes. And say to them, this is what the Lord God says. Behold, I am going to take the sons of Israel from among the nations where they have gone. Who was supposed to do that? Bar Ephraim, or Bar Yosef. I will gather them from every side, bring them into their own land, and I will make them one nation in the land and on the mountains of Israel. And one king will be king for all of them. Which one is that? Ben David. They will no longer be two nations and no longer divided into two kingdoms. They will no longer defile themselves with their idols. That's giving you that context. Why did we need Messiah? Goes back to the golden calf. Actually goes back farther. But in this expectation of forming, what is a Messiah? What do we expect him to do? It's going to be rooted right there in the sin of the golden calf, because this is where the idolatry really takes root in Israel. He says they'll no longer defile themselves with their idols or with their detestable things. The 144,000 have not defiled themselves with those idols. He says, I'll rescue them from all their dwelling places in which they have sinned. I will cleanse them. Remember the fountain of Bar Ephraim? He's going to open up the fountain. I will cleanse them, and they will be my people, and I will be their God, and my servant David will be king over them, and they will have one shepherd. And they will walk in my ordinances, keep my statutes, and follow them. So here's what happens. Here's why I think we've got two names of tribes missing. In a sense, when the northern kingdom split off, when Jeroboam set up two golden calves, and have you ever wondered, like, why golden calves? If you're going to go into idolatry, you pick a golden calf, knowing your history. This is what you want? And apparently the answer is yes. So that it's split into the northern kingdom, and then you've got the southern kingdom of Judah that remains under Rehoboam. And what they believe that Messiah ben Yosef is going to have to suffer and die to atone for the idolatry of Ephraim. And sometimes the northern tribes were referred to collectively as Ephraim. And they believe mysteriously he's somehow going to regather them from their exile that was a result of this idolatry of the golden calves. And when he regathers them, this is going to usher in the kingdom of Mashiach ben David. He's going to reunite it. And again, they see him as two people, but they keep saying, but they're inseparable. You can't divide them. And I think, well, how can we see this? How can we help a brother see this? And I don't know that we can without relationship and direct intervention of the Holy Spirit. But if we're willing, and the Holy Spirit is moving through us, which Yeshua promised it would do if we would come to him, I think this glimpse at the tree of life in Revelation 22:2 can help us. It says, he showed me a river of the water of life, which Yeshua said he was, clear as crystal, coming from the throne of God and of the Lamb in the middle of its street. On either side of the river was the tree. One stick, one tree. It was the tree of life bearing 12 kinds of fruit, one for each tribe, yielding its fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. What happened at Sinai? Healing. There will no longer be any curse, and the throne of God and the Lamb will be in it, and his bondservants will serve him. They will see his face, and his name will be on their foreheads. There will no longer be any night. They will not have need of the light of a lamp, nor of the light of the sun, because the Lord God will illuminate them, and they will reign forever and ever. That was the goal of Israel, to repatriate them to the garden. We had a golden calf problem, and then we had 2 golden calf problems. But we can see right here at this restoration, there's one tree, but yet it's growing on 2 sides of the river. And I think that's exactly what Zechariah was prophesying about. I think that's exactly what John saw. He saw one Messiah with 2 aspects. As Bar Ephraim, the suffering servant, who's going out there being the shepherd to gather in the lost exiles who had to leave because of 2 golden calves. And he's going to bring them back. He's going to fight the adversary at the gates of Jerusalem, and Satan will be bound, it says, for 1,000 years. So, 2 tribes were primarily responsible for those golden calves. And now we can kind of get why their names might be missing. Ephraim and Dan. When Jeroboam split the United Kingdom, he put those calves in Beit El and then up in Dan. You can still go there today. Well, you can't now, but theoretically you could. Jeroboam was from the tribe of Ephraim. And so this goes back to the golden calf. What they believed about the golden calf at Sinai was that it was built or conjured, I don't know what you call it, under the influence of Jannes and Jambres. It's mentioned in 2 Timothy 3:8. Magicians that came out of Egypt, and they had a hand in how this golden calf was prepared. And the tradition says that this calf was able to look like it was eating grass and make noises. And this is how it deceived so many Israelites. Well, again, if we go to the book of Revelation, the beast is able to deceive so many people because it has the appearance of life when it's only death. That golden calf was death. It had the appearance of life. And so if you're looking for life and death things, then you're probably going to be deceived. But as we look at this, we see a rectification of that. We don't have to fall for that anymore. We don't have to fall for dead things trying to convince us they're life, and life more abundantly, when we know they're just death and death more abundantly. But these 2 tribes were primarily responsible. Dan up in the north, and of course under the leadership of Ephraim. And I think the fact that their names are missing, I think we're out of time too, so we'll just stop here. We're almost done anyway. I think the fact that their names are missing does not mean the people are missing. I think that's a sign to people who know what is expected in Messiah, that he has to come back and rectify these golden calf problems. And if we understand that these are the 2 leaders of the northern tribes in terms of importing the golden calf, and because of them, the exiles were scattered among the nations. The fact that you see their names missing, even though they're still there, I think that's kind of a subtext to somebody who would know that this is taken care of. Messiah is here. Messiah Bar Ephraim is here. You don't need to read his name. He's here. He's rectified these sins. And so with that, we can see that the 2 tribes most instrumental in your scattering, those names are not mentioned. However, just because the name is not there is not a problem. Because remember when Moses bargained after the golden calf? After he's had all these problems with Israel, he says, if you're going to blot their names out of your book, then blot me out of your book. Blot my name out. Well, his name wasn't blotted out of the whole book. He was blotted out of one Torah portion. I think it was Tetzaveh. Every other name is mentioned in the world but Moses. It doesn't mean he wasn't there. It means be careful what you ask for. right? So I think this is good news for us. We don't have to worry that those tribes are missing anymore, but we can be encouraged that Messiah bar Ephraim, Mashiach ben David, the one tree, he's just one, that he has rectified these sins of the golden calf. He has regathered the exiles. This war that's going to take place, he's going to prevail. He died at the gates of Jerusalem the first time. They got that right. But they also got right that he's going to prevail at the gates of Jerusalem when he returns, and he will rise up as Mashiach ben David. So I don't know who that was for specifically. It was under duress. But if that gives you just a shred of empathy, if you know this is the information people were working with at that time, then you can see why a little bit of confusion might have entered in when that Mashiach ben David they thought would just be right after bar Ephraim. It makes you understand. You gave Bill 1 minute. One. If they know bar Ephraim has to die at the gates of Jerusalem in order to open the atoning fountain, to cleanse them from their sins, and to have Satan bound for 1,000 years. If you knew that, had you welcomed in Mashiach ben David to Jerusalem with palm branches and throwing your garments down in front of him and saying, Hoshiana, save us, how would you switch on a dime and say, crucify him? Give us Barabbas. And Pilate would say, well, what has he done? Crucify Yeshua. Barabbas can't do a thing for us on a cross. You ever wonder how that many people flipped almost overnight? If they knew that bar Ephraim had to die at the gates of Jerusalem to open up the fountain of blood to atone for their sins and their children's sins, doesn't it make more sense why they would say, let his blood be upon us and our children? But would you have wanted to be one of those people that called for his death? But you did. When we sinned, we called for his death just the way that they did. Now, I believe they were deceived into doing it by the leadership. I think the chief priests, you can read very clearly. In fact, if you want to, it's right there in Matthew 27:15 through 26. Read the whole passage again. I think the chief priests thought they were doing something else, but he spoke prophetically that year. It says because he was the high priest. He says it's expedient for one man to die for the nation. He played upon that expectation of bar Ephraim. So imagine when everybody didn't see Yeshua pop right back up at the gates of Jerusalem, conquer Rome, and restore the Davidic kingdom. You could have missed it too, guys. You could have missed it too. You stay in that word. You get as close to Yeshua as you can. You hold on to the testimony of Yeshua and the commandments of God, and don't let anybody ever break those two things apart. They are one tree in your hand.